Hi everybody, and welcome back to day 10 of the Conscious Masculinity Intensive. Today we are talking about toxic masculinity. We've touched on this in bits and pieces in our time together, but we're going to dive in deeper today, talk about what toxic masculinity is, what this trend is of blanket making the statement that people hate men or that men are trash, and where we fall within that conversation and what the future beyond that particular conversation is, and really what our role is in repairing these toxic dynamics within masculinity. Simply put, toxic masculinity is a set of behaviors that is born out of the patriarchal idea, the premise of the patriarchy, that men and masculinity are superior to women and people of other genders and other gendered forms of energy, such as femininity. Now, as we've discussed, there is nothing inherently wrong with masculinity, with this one end of the energetic polarity that includes things like being action-oriented, being more stoic, being more rational, more logical, being more physical in certain ways, and maybe being a protector, being a provider, those sort of archetypal energies that fall on one end of this polarity. As we've discussed, there's absolutely nothing wrong with them. It is part of what makes us human. We all contain a blend of it all. Toxic masculinity is masculinity on steroids, sometimes literally. It is this amplification of one side of the polarity without the balance of the other side, and with the inherent idea that it is superior. And this doesn't necessarily show up as a conscious thought on the part of people who are embodying quote-unquote toxic masculinity, people who are talking over women or people of other genders, people who are disrespecting the consent and agency of women and people of other genders, and even other men, people who are not honoring the lived experience of women and feminine people. However this toxic masculinity is showing up, it's not necessarily at the level of thought that someone is thinking, I'm doing this because I am inherently superior to you, and masculinity is the preferable way to manifest as a human being, and I'm trying to express it at its peak so that I can maintain power and stay safe in this system. That's not necessarily what someone is consciously thinking, but as we've seen, this gets really conditioned into us, and we sometimes land feeling like it's our only option. It's how we have been conditioned to self-express, and so that is where I want to bring in some compassion and some empathy and some real consciousness to this toxic masculinity bind. Because I see so many men feeling really confused by this language. First of all, no one likes to be called toxic. And furthermore, no one likes to realize that the system that they've been conditioned to comply with in order to keep themselves safe is actually based on a lie, is actually based on a very dehumanizing narrative that dehumanizes both them and other people. It can feel like a real con to realize that what you have been working so hard to comply with, and what you have been almost subconsciously at this point calibrating your self-expression towards, is actually no longer preferable, and all of a sudden you're expected to act in a totally different way, that even though it might be more humane for yourself and ultimately more natural, feels like a big 180 because of all of the work you've done on that subconscious level to comply with the original system. So I want to bring in some compassion for the level of bewilderment that can happen in these situations, especially when we realize that behavior that we've been enacting, whether or not it's big or it's subtle. You know, there may be some of us who are watching this, and certainly we all know someone who's been involved in really major consent violations, people really disrespecting the bodily and emotional autonomy of other human beings. This may also be showing up for you. The things that are coming up may feel really small, really slight. That one time that maybe you made an assumption that a woman in a work environment was not the boss, that one time that you completely shut down and you couldn't hear your friend share what was going on for her, you couldn't listen to your partner, you got really angry and you just shut down and you said, just figure it out, you're being really emotional, I don't know why you're making such a big deal out of this. Whatever it is, these small moments where you've seen this toxicity arise in yourself, we want to bring some compassion for self, understanding why we landed in this place. It's been a fear-based system of conditioning us to get there. And the beautiful thing about things like the Me Too movement and just modern feminism, which is really putting a spotlight on the lies of the patriarchy, on the faulty premise that men and masculinity are superior and that women and femininity are inferior, and all of the beliefs that spin off of that, shining a light on that lie, on that inconsistency, is opening up an incredible amount of space for all of us to become more fully ourselves, to become more fully human, to build the really deep emotional connections that we're all seeking. And also, it brings up a lot, because whenever we really stake our claim on what we truly, truly deserve, and we own that really big vision, it brings up all of the unresolved stuff in the middle. And that is what we are dealing with right now. This is why we have been doing this belief inventory on masculinity. It's helping us realize all of these different little places that we have maybe been made to embody this toxicity and repeat it out in the world without even realizing it. That's why I call them autopilot beliefs, because they were set years ago and they're just running in the background. But as soon as we bring consciousness to them, we create an opportunity for us to shift it. Now, the second place that I want to bring really deep compassion and empathy is to anybody who has found themselves in this lifetime saying a phrase like, all men suck, or men are trash, or the future of gender involves eradicating men, any of this real deep blanket hatred that is put on men. And I want us to, particularly those of us who really do identify as men and as masculine people who are watching this, to understand, to drop in for a moment to the level of pain on a generational and a personal level that brings someone to make a statement like that. Right? You have to feel really, really deeply harmed by a group of people in order to make that statement. And this is where we need to do the sort of expansion of our consciousness. Because when someone says all men are trash, or I hate all men, we're often conflating men with the patriarchy. So these ideas, when you hear fuck all men or something like that, I want you to start to layer that this person is saying in a simpler way, F the patriarchy, F this system that makes me feel like I am less than, F this system that has created people who are on an autopilot system to act in ways that strip me of my autonomy, my capacity for self-expression, my capacity to obtain the abundance and the resources that I need to thrive. F that system. That is really the deep core belief underneath a statement like, screw all men. So I want us to bring that level of awareness, in addition to understanding the level of pain that must exist for someone to make a statement like that. So when we hear a statement like that, I want you to practice sending love to the part of yourself that feels really harmed by a statement like that, while also working on taking responsibility for the underlying dynamics that have led to someone saying that, and not immediately lashing out at them. Really bringing a loving witness to the source of their pain as well, understanding that the system that has led to a statement like all men are trash is a system that is hurting all of us, that you at this very moment are working on deconstructing within yourself and within the world. That being said, I do not believe that a statement like all men are trash, or we need to get rid of men in order to save the world, things like that, I do not believe that those are true statements, and I really am intending to move us to a place where we don't immediately associate masculinity and manhood with violence. This is something that I experienced, as I've shared before, as I was navigating identifying as a man, as a trans person, and lots of people in my life said, the world doesn't need another man, Aaron. You're just gonna become another bro. You're just gonna become some other toxic bro who is super macho and all of these things. That people told me lots of stories about who I was gonna become. And here I stand before you, open to being critiqued, but pretty clear that I'm not a bro, and that I'm not an asshole, and that I'm not harming other human beings by being myself. So I've seen firsthand how these stories can really curtail our ability to self-express. So I want us to, in our minds, in our vision, to anchor a vision of the world where men and masculinity are celebrated parts of our society just as much as women and femininity and people who are both and neither, and expanding our interdimensional consciousness about what it means to be a gendered human being in this world. And so what I want us to focus on now is this concept of repair and amends. When I think about the word amends, I literally picture often like a stitching up of a wound, a mending of a broken bone, this sort of setting things right. As people who are embodying manhood and or masculinity, this energy that has been prioritized in an extremely distorted way that has created quite a lot of violence for ourselves and for other people in this world, we have a responsibility to make amends and to repair harms that have been done. This means for our own lives, but also I want to really encourage us to take responsibility on a collective level and to do it from a place of healed and whole masculinity. This is not about, okay, now I have to provide for the entire world and let me put more on my back and feel more and more burdened by all the things I have to do. This is about looking at this as an opportunity. Where can you dig deep? Where can you blend your masculinity and your femininity? Where can you really cultivate that sense of responsibility for yourself and for your community and for a desire to relieve everybody of patterns of harm and take the next right action? Lean into doing a hard thing, knowing that relief lies on the other side. And so the homework for today is to really think about where are places first in my own life that I have acted from a lesser manifestation of one of these masculine characteristics, where instead of being steady and providing, I actually got really controlling. Where instead of being devoted to my partner, I got really obsessive and I felt like I owned them or I wanted to control them. Where was I not simply even keeled in a moment of stress, but actually completely emotionally closed down in a way that made it really hard for someone that loves me and that I love to connect with me and to feel safe around me? Where have I exploded and lashed out because I have been spending so much time keeping my emotions suppressed, trying to not express myself, that when it does come out, it comes out in really explosive and scary ways for the people in my life? Looking at how this quote unquote toxic masculinity, this sort of perversion of masculinity has shown up within yourself, and identifying at least one place where you can make a repair. And there's lots of ways the repair can show up. This may literally look like giving an honest apology to someone in your life. And when we make an apology, we really want to make it an offering. So not so much explaining, not saying, I've learned all these things about masculinity and I'm realizing that, this is what was going on for me and that's why I did this. Maybe a little bit of context, but mostly saying, hey, I really wanted to let you know that in this insert specific situation, what I did was really not okay. And I see that now. I've been doing work on myself and I see that that really wasn't okay. And I want to let you know, first, that I'm really sorry. Second, it's my intention to never do that again in my life, and I'm doing the work to make sure that that doesn't happen again. And three, I want to hold space now for you to let me know if there's anything else that you want me to know about how my actions in that situation impacted you. And then listen. Listen until they're done. If you feel moved, you can say sorry again, but you can also just say thank you so much for letting me know. I hear you, I honor you, I know that my actions have impacted you in X, Y, and Z way, and again, it's my intention to acknowledge that and to never do that again, right? You can make an apology like that that really is about almost that energy of holding. I physically feel that energy in front of you, holding that container, that space for someone else. This may look like an aspect of your amends being actually forgiving yourself as well. Maybe doing a little bit of that tapping that we've been doing, sending love to yourself and forgiving the part of yourself, right? You may have memories. I know I have a couple of memories from when I was maybe 12, 13 years old, and I said hurtful things to other kids because I was just parroting what I heard from my parents, and I was scared, and it was on autopilot within me already, saying things judgmental about other people's religions, other people's sexualities. And when I think about making an amend in that situation, I can explicitly go to that person, if I still remember who they are, and make that direct amends and apologize. But I can also simply make an amends with myself and forgive myself for saying things that were out of alignment with who I am as a human being, and to forgive my younger self for believing the only story that he had ever heard and repeating it to someone else in a way that hurt them. so we can do that kind of reconnecting with our inner child, our younger self, amends making as well. And the third piece of amends making here, and this is where we have an opportunity to kind of go to that 201, 301 level where we're really taking responsibility for the collective, is looking at how can I make repair and amends on a collective level. So for me, as someone who runs my own business, one way that this shows up is that I actually make financial and material amends and reparations through donating to women-led organizations, and particularly women of color-led organizations, and particularly trans women of color-led organizations. So taking a certain percentage of my revenue every year and just automatically giving that back, knowing that there's been a deep generations-long imbalance in who has had access to resources in our society. And even though I have an understanding that maybe my identity as a trans person, as a queer person, has impacted my earning capacity in some way, I still understand the relative, very deep privilege that I hold as a white person and as a man. And so it's just an autopilot foundational thing that a certain amount of the resources that come to me in this life are going out to people who have been historically disadvantaged. So that's one way to do it as well. Another way to do it is you can simply sit in meditation. There's a beautiful Buddhist meditation concept called loving kindness meditation, or metta, M-E-T-T-A. Basically this idea of dropping into your heart space in a meditation, visualizing your heart and sending first a mantra to yourself where you are saying things like, may you be happy, may you be safe, may you be healthy, may you live a life of peace. And then you extend that to other people. And I love this because particularly in the sort of personal development, like biohacking, wellness age that we're in right now, now age, however, new age, however you talk about it, there's often this really individualized focus. And if you're manifesting things, it's like you're manifesting your own career, you're manifesting your own partnership, you're healing your own specific life. But what would it look like to also add some energy where you're sitting in meditation and you're wishing peace for people of all genders? You're holding your beautiful visions that you've already created. You're holding that idea of a world where everybody gets to show up as themselves. You're wishing well to people who historically you've been pitted against. There's really deep metaphysical power in that as well. And so we could talk forever about amends. There's so many different specific ways that we could do this. And over the course of the next few days, we're gonna keep identifying as we talk more about relationships and community and allyship and things like that, where are some places where we can continue to repair, knowing that when we do that, it's almost like if our life is a string, there's this knot there. There's this knot that keeps holding us back because we haven't dealt with it. And if we unravel that knot, it releases ourselves, and it also releases everybody else who is involved as well. And so we'll talk more about different iterations, but for today, I want you to just to do that inventory. What comes to mind when you think of toxic masculinity? What are ways in which you have seen yourself embody the non-exalted aspects of masculinity that we've discussed? And where is one place where you can make an explicit repair, an amends, an apology to someone or to a group of people in your life? Deep breath. We got this. I'm so proud of you for taking this next step. It is intense in some ways, but it's also a beautiful liberatory journey, because every next step that we take, we give ourselves more and more permission to simply be ourselves and to live the life that we know every human being deserves. So we're gonna wrap up here for today. As always, share, connect, share in the group, share online, #ConsciousMasculinityCrew. Let people know where you are in your process. Make sure you keep leaning into your support system as well, calling on the energy of your positive masculinity archetypes and role models to guide you through this process. How would they make an amends? How would they make a repair? Calling on that energy and bringing it into yourself and out into the world. So I'm wishing you all best of luck with your work today, sending you all so much love, and I will see you back here tomorrow for day 11.